gives me great pleasure this morning to introduce to you a good friend and colleague, a person that I have known for more than 3 decades, I think, if not more. Dr. Wheeler, I first met Dr. Wheeler when he was invited to come to Tuskegee University in 1991 to serve as Dean of the Chapel and Professor of Religion and Society. And he stuck with us for a good 6 or 7 years. You have his bio in the program, so I will not read it for you, but I will highlight a few elements of that bio. He is an ordained Baptist minister, and he came out of retirement actually a few years ago to accept the challenge of the presidency of the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta. We know it as ITC. In 2012, Dr. Wheeler retired as president of the Christian Theological Seminary in Indianapolis, Indiana, where he led that seminary to unparalleled growth for 14 years. Dr. Wheeler has also served in numerous church and education-related positions during his career. He was senior pastor of Zion Baptist Church in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was a faculty member at United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, and he was also dean of the Morehouse School of Religion. He received the BA degree from Morehouse College, the Master's of Divinity from Colgate Rochester Divinity School, and the Ph.D. in Historical Theology from Emory University in Atlanta. Dr. Wheeler is a native of Atlanta and is highly regarded as a community leader, educator, and author who continues to be in great demand as a preacher, a lecturer, and as a speaker in various community endeavors. Reverend Wheeler and his wife, Mary, who's here with us, if you will stand, Mary Wheeler. They have been married for 49 years and are blessed with 3 adult daughters and 3 grandchildren, and 1 daughter. Dawn is with us. Will you stand, Dawn, please? Thank you. Now please join me as we give Dr. Wheeler, for one more time, a big Tuskegee University welcome.
Dr. Barr, I saw you earlier this morning in the office, and I said something to you then that I want to repeat. After all these years, one of the joys of being dean of the chapel that I miss was that I knew that every Sunday there'd be good music. You continue to stand in that tradition, and the golden voices are still golden. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be back on the campus of Tuskegee University and to once again be in this sacred space where for 6.5 years I had the awesome opportunity to serve as Dean of the Chapel and Professor of Religion and Society. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Charlotte Morris for this invitation. As she indicated, I first met her when I became unknowingly a candidate for the chaplaincy. And from the time I first met her to this very moment, she has always been kind and gracious to me. Tuskegee is blessed to have someone with her expertise, compassion, commitment, and integrity serving the institution she loves. I also wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Gregory Gray, who I proudly claim as a former student, even though it is a sign of the circle of life when the student becomes the teacher. Dr. Gray has always been kind and gracious to me also, and has often given me more credit than I believe I deserve. His concern for my every need and his Christian hospitality is and has been a blessing to me over the years. As I look around the audience, I see the faces of many people who have been a blessing to me and my family over the years. Your presence is a source of encouragement to me. However, I am also reminded of dear friends who helped Mary Susan and me raise our children and whose love enriched our lives, who have joined the ancestors, but whose presence is still felt. I thank God for the Tuskegee University, its students, staff, and administration, and the Tuskegee community for the investment you made in the Wheeler family. I pray you feel that your investment was a good one. I bring you greetings from the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, where I have the distinct privilege, honor, and awesome responsibility of serving as that institution's 10th president. As mentioned, I am blessed to have both my daughter, Dawn, a 1997 graduate of TU. You know I haven't forgotten. And my wife of almost 49 years, Mary Susan Wheeler, who while we were here served as Associate Director of Housing and later became a recruiter for the TU Nursing School. There were many students on the campus who knew me as Mrs. Wheeler's husband. I thank them for accompanying me today and for taking time from their schedules to be supportive of me. They have been a blessing to my life and the wind beneath my wings. Now let me get to the task I have been asked to do. It is a good thing I was motioning to Dean Gray with which podium I would like to use, and he indicated either one was all right. But he also indicated that this would be the best place. And I'm grateful for that, because anytime I climb those stairs, I'm tempted to preach. But anytime I climb those stairs, I'm also very much aware that those on the first 3 rows are going to get a crick in their neck looking up. I want to talk today using as a theme fulfilling the potential of the dream. Fulfilling the potential of the dream. Today marks the 89th birthday of the man we know as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Our celebration is being duplicated across the United States and in countries around the world as a wide range of the human family seeks to remember and honor a man who was the most noted leader of the modern civil rights movement. Often referred to as the drum major for justice, his life and ministry continue to remind us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Today, in Dr. King's honor, there will be recitations of and cheers for his most often quoted "I Have a Dream" speech delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in August 28, 1963, that became the highlight of what was then the march on Washington. That speech captured the vision of the potential of America to become one country where every person would be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. Dr. King's speech was a profound articulation of the unspoken hopes and dreams of millions of African Americans. The potential that he so eloquently identified in his dream speech may have been adjusted over time, but the fact that the speech is still repeated almost 55 years after it was first uttered speaks to the persistence of the dream. However, the fact that the dream has not been fulfilled is something that I believe you and I must be concerned about. Therefore, in the time I have left, I want to talk to you and myself, using as a theme fulfilling the potential of the dream. The first point I want to make is the necessity of a dream. Howard Thurman, the noted philosopher, theologian, preacher, whose insights and celebration of black spirituality continues to inform and shape black spiritual consciousness, wrote, "As long as a person has a dream in his heart, he cannot lose the significance of living. Men, humanity, cannot continue to long to live if the dream in the heart has perished. It is then that they stop hoping, stop looking, and the last embers of their anticipation fade away." Thurman identified the dream in the heart as an indication of humanity's connection with the divine. Men and women were not bound by their circumstances as long as they could envision and dream of new possibilities. It is the dream of the unfulfilled potential, the dream of what might be, what could be, that makes life worth living. That is exactly what gave life and continues to give life to Dr. King's words. Those words resonated with the hope that was not based on the circumstances of the moment. The "I have a dream" speech captured the potential that he and generations after him saw and see in America. That dream strengthened men and women, black and white, young and old, laity and clergy, students and workers to walk, ride, work, sacrifice, go to jail, be assaulted, and even killed, because the potential that the dream identified was believed to be worth the cost. The dream made life worthwhile. The dream resurrected a sense of value and power, dignity and self-respect in the hearts and minds of the oppressed and the marginalized. The dream reaffirmed the connection between the aspirations for a just and equal society and God's creative intent for humanity. The dream was not simply a human quest, and it certainly was not just the American dream. It was the inherent gift of God planted in the DNA of humanity. The ability to dream still has the power to give significance to one's life. As long as you and I can dream of new possibilities, as long as we can see the potential of overcoming the setbacks and obstacles that stand in our way, we have a reason to keep working to achieve the dream. As long as we can dream, we cannot lose the significance of life. However, there are threats to maintaining the ability to dream. The necessity of a dream in order for humanity to be fully human and recognize the significance of life is a concept that Martin King shared with Howard Thurman. That concept was shared and is still celebrated by countless people, including those who gather here today, at least to some degree. However, dreams are frequently threatened by the realities of life that confront dreams. After all, dreams are by nature not reflections of the present reality. Rather, they are the visions of what can be. Therefore, dreams are born with the threat of time. The urgency of the dream, the justice of the dream, the appropriateness of the dream is always in tension with the time it takes to make the dream a reality. Langston Hughes, the highly celebrated prolific poet, writer, who was one of the gifted artists of the Harlem Renaissance, in his 1951 poem named Harlem, captured the tension between the dream and time when he wrote, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotted meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?" Hughes's poem identifies two time-related threats to the dream that must be taken seriously. One threat is a debilitating complacency that accepts the delayed dream with a callous attitude that suggests that the dream itself is sufficient. Over time, the goals, the potential of the dream are forgotten or ignored. This threat leads to the acceptance of the status quo and ultimately denies that the dream has any chance of becoming reality. This perspective is what I fear is happening with all too many celebrations of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his dream. The urgency of the dream is dismissed. The delay is accepted. And instead of working to achieve the dream, we simply celebrate the dreamer and his dream. As a result, the dream dries up like a raisin in the sun, crusts over like a syruply sweet, or just sags like a heavy load. The other threat to the dream, identified by Hughes in Harlem, is no less dangerous to the realization of the dream. In this case, the delay in achieving the dream leads to a bitter, rotten, and potentially violent reaction. That option rarely leads to the achievement of the ultimate goal of human fulfillment that maximizes the potential of the individual and the broader society. In all too many situations, this threat leads to internalized self-hatred that is manifested in acts of self-destruction. The anger, frustration, disillusionment of the delay in realizing the dream can lead to a dismissal of the dream, a denial of its validity, and a subsequent questioning of the very value of life itself that no longer is motivated by a dream. In Martin's letter from a Birmingham jail, written 4 months before his "I Have a Dream" speech, he recognized the inherent threat that the delay to the dream of justice had created in the black community. He chastised the white religious leadership that demanded that he was too impatient, saying, "For years now, I have heard the words wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. I guess it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait." King King saw that a delay in creating a just society was a detriment to achieving the dream. King also recognized that the movement he led stood between two opposing viewpoints, even in the African American community. Both positions threatened the dream of a harmonious society characterized by equality and justice. This realization led him to say, "I have tried to stand between these two forces, saying that we need not follow the do-nothing-isms of the complacent or the hatred and despair of black nationalism. The delay in achieving the dream continues to create at least the same two major threats that are characterized by complacency or a violent rejection of the dream. These threats are epitomized on the one hand by those in the African American community who did not vote in the last presidential election, including Colin Kaepernick, after concluding voting does not matter. How you feeling now? On the other hand, is the self-destructive actions of the African American gunmen in Baton Rouge and Dallas, who, denying the validity of the dream, directed their rage over continued delay and the denial of justice toward the indiscriminate killing of police officers that made no progress in our community. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it fester like a sore and then run stink like rotted meat, or does it explode? Both complacency and violence deny the value of the dream and undermine the significance of living. I am therefore convinced that Dr. King was right when he came with a resolution of the dilemma. His resolution demands that we commit to fulfill the dream. I affirm the idea that having a dream of what might be is essential to embracing the significance of life. Having a dream as a pole star can empower the dreamer and those who embrace the dream to overcome the particular challenges of one's circumstances. However, I also recognize the threats to a dream when the dream is delayed and deferred. Whether the threat is complacency or violence, time itself does not help bring the dream to fruition. Despite the criticism of Dr. King from contemporaries and those who have come after him, Martin Luther King Jr. was no romantic dreamer. Once again, his words penned while in the Birmingham jail to the white clergy of that city who had criticized him and the movement echo with the power of timeless truth. He wrote, "It is the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. We must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and persistent work of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. While Martin Luther King Jr., while his rhetoric is often celebrated, citing his I Have a Dream speech as the example, today I want to suggest that it is his commitment to work for the fulfilling of that dream that deserves to be honored on this day in Tuskegee, Alabama. Rhetoric is beautiful, but action is better. You may not believe in his nonviolent strategy. You may not appreciate his stance on civil disobedience. You may oppose his views on the Vietnam War, and you may recoil from his insistence that integration and the quest for justice and equality would redeem this nation. However, no one, not even his most ardent, persistent opponent, can deny that he was totally committed to living in a way that would help make the dream that motivated him become the reality of his day. Frederick Douglass is reported as having said, "Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground." Martin Luther King Jr. exhibited a lack of understanding of the depth of racial animosity in Cicero, Illinois. However, he was always aware that change would not come without a willingness to risk everything for the cause of justice and equality. In response to being called an extremist, King stated, "I gradually gained a bit of satisfaction from being considered an extremist. The question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate, or will we be extremists for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice, or will we be extremists for the cause of justice?" Perhaps it is my age, but I have become weary of and impatient with celebrations that purport to honor the life and ministry of Dr. King that do not lead to a commitment to work to make the dream he gave his life for a reality. I have disdain for the signing of proclamations and pronouncements that claim to honor Martin Luther King Jr., that are signed by and proclaimed by persons whose vile, demeaning, dehumanizing rhetoric and actions stand in opposition to Martin's dream and his work. Therefore, on this 15th day of January in the year of our Lord 2018, I come to my close by challenging you and myself to honor the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by committing and or recommitting ourselves to the hard work of making the dream of freedom, equality, and justice a reality. This sacred campus, this historic town, this amazing community has long been a model of African American excellence and achievement. I challenge you today to rekindle the commitment to excellence and not be satisfied with mediocrity. Whether you are a student, a faculty member, an administrator, or members of the broader community, live into your own excellence. challenge you and myself to defy the odds and overcome the obstacles of our time, just as Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, Chief C. Alfred Anderson, the Tuskegee Airmen, General Daniel Chaffee Jr., Joffrey James Jr., Booker Felder, and Herman Russell did in their day. This community has been the embodiment of Martin's dream because it has never settled for mediocrity or a second-class mentality. How dare you do that now? In the face of a resurgence of white supremacist rhetoric and the emboldening of racist ideologues around the country, you are needed to once again stand up, speak up, and live into potential God has given us, and that is powerfully proclaimed by Martin's dream. That dream of justice and freedom and equality has too long been delayed. Now is the time for the potential of the dream to be realized. Now is the time for us to be everything we have been asked to be. In the words of the Old Testament prophet, I believe that Amos, on this day of celebration, would say, I despise your festival. And I take no delight in your solemn assembly. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them, says the Lord. And the offering of well-being of your fatted animals, I will not look upon. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Fulfill the dream, beginning here, beginning now. Martin Luther King Jr.'s sacrifice deserves no less.